traced to America, and he's out on 40,000 rand bail.
I think he's also waiting for extradition, isn't he?
We're still waiting for USA to send the application for extradition.
Okay.
And then on March the 16th, again this year, we have a Port Elizabeth couple, a 22-year-old woman, a 33-year-old man. We are hoping that the 22-year-old girlfriend will be charged for her role in assisting her partner, and their arrest then led to the Midrand. So there's quite a lot of connection in all of these cases. Really, by creating awareness, we aim to prevent and eradicate these crimes. We need the public to take action in putting pressure on the South African government and our Justice Department to make every effort in stopping the abuse of children used to create images of child rape. We commend Yvette and all members of the public and the NGOs here in Plettenberg Bay and surrounding areas for their activism, their marches and their court protests, which have highlighted to the general public some of the general public's concern in these matters. Wamaka will be at the Plettenberg court, where William will be appearing, and we also have a team, as I mentioned, at the Alexandra court. A large portion of the South African public are not aware of really the severity, and I think by all the activism that's created in all the areas where people are found in possession, really will start understanding that each image really is a crime scene. The general response to child pornography is that it's just kiddie porn and pictures. So we need to stress what the background and reality really is, and that is the actual rape, sexual assault of children to make these images. There seems to be no thinking around the victim that gave rise to an image of child rape. The reality is there is a child victim in every image that desperately needs our protection. The stark reality of child pornography is that it is an actual rape scene, a torture, and in many instances, the murder of children filmed, recorded, sold, and distributed. And again here, this all results in furthering the market, making the market bigger. Asked to imagine what happens in the production of images of sexual abuse of children, most of us would not be able to come anywhere near to the real horror of child pornography. It is heinous, horrendous, and malicious sexual crimes against children that happen every day around the world. Journalists, investigators, and legal experts who have to watch videos or look at pictures of the rape of children, which they have to do to perform their duties in order to try and stop the scourge, describe shocking and repulsive images that haunt them forever. Toddlers do not and cannot volunteer to be sexually brutalized and tortured for the sexual gratification of perverts. Children are not physically, psychologically, and physiologically, psychologically, and emotionally developed to accept sexual penetration. Any sexual act with a child would harm the child physically, psychologically, and emotionally. A few doctors have in fact confessed that they have not been trained to deal with the sort of injuries that a toddler suffers from sexual penetration. That doctors need training to deal with such injuries is a telling comment on our society. In order to ensure the appropriate sentencing for those convicted of involvement in child pornography acts, the crime should be seen not simply as the possession or distribution of images, pictures of child abuse, but as it is the sexual abuse, exploitation, degradation, and impairment of the dignity of all children, and the promotion of the use of child pornography for sexual gratification through the portrayal of children as acceptable sexual objects. That's something I think we have to remember. Child pornographers who collect, distribute, and share abusive images of children bear responsibility not only for the use of such images for sexual gratification and grooming, but also for encouraging further creation of child pornography through the sexual abuse and brutalization of children. So we feel that they are directly implicated in this growing market that we see that seems to be growing year on year of the amount of pictures available on the internet. The possession of child pornography should in fact be seen as not far from falling within the scope of what is defined as depraved indifference, conduct that shows utter disregard for the value of human life, not because such a person means to cause harm, but because he or she simply does not care whether such conduct will lead to harm. It's an inhumane state of mind, and there is zero empathy. Policing efforts against online child abuse is one of the darkest and most technically challenging crimes for police worldwide. There are no reliable figures about the scale of the trade. Credit card and online payment confirms the huge profit making is only limited to a few pornographers. According to Interpol experts, there seems to be relatively little organized crime involvement, and police in fact believe that little money changes hands. The crime is dominated by individuals who operate informally and exchange pictures through their networks with their own hierarchies and social codes. SAPS officials have confirmed to us that William and the suspects linked to his exchange network show little or no financial gain, but admit to being addicted to watching babies and children being raped. One of the suspects is being investigated for using his own children, while another, as mentioned earlier, is wanted in the US for raping local children and distributing the images to the US. For Wamaka, the profit-making issue really is irrelevant. The victims must be found and rescued if they are still alive, and these depraved criminals must be severely punished for inciting the rape of babies and children. And I think that's a word you'll see coming up quite often, and that is for actually inciting it. Just by swapping these images, just by calling for new images. We're also tired really of hearing sympathy for these suspects. In fact, we really are quite angry when we hear sympathy for these suspects. Faced with allegations of conjecture, innocent until proven guilty, what about the victims is what we are saying here. Tortured, raped, brutalized, murdered, and if they survive, potentially psychologically scarred for life, limited in living their lives in a certain way. These are horrific and serious crimes. So what are our aims for today's press conference? Certainly to put pressure on the state to take immediate and effective action against alleged pedophiles, to create awareness and prevention, to ensure our laws on pornography are being implemented, to ensure maximum sentences for serious crimes against children on camera, because it's one thing to just have serious penalties for crimes on children, that one can have a victim there and a perpetrator, but we also want crimes that are recorded on camera to have serious penalties, to eradicate the abuse of children and the images of children being raped. And one of the things we're really going to struggle with, but we will carry on with, is no bail for pedophiles. The use of the term child pornography is also problematic. Wamaka, as to the police and child rights group, reject the term child pornography, which implies consent and a certain amount of social acceptance. Child and pornography, like child and sex, are not things that really go together. So why do we put them together under the label of child pornography? Pornography is legal in our country, so to label the images of actual crime scenes of sexual abuse of children as pornography undermines the reality that the images are crimes, and that the viewing and distributing and manufacturing of all criminal offences for which people should be held equally accountable. In other words, you cannot equate pornography with a clandestine world where children are being raped. So we'd rather say and call it what it really is, and that is images of sexual abuse and crimes against children. So you will see us from now on as much as possible. Unfortunately, often with media and general public, that connection hasn't been made, and the